I'm Julianne Moore, no, not the actress. Just a small-town girl who used to believe that family meant love and that home was a place where you were always welcome. I was wrong. Very wrong. The last time I stood in my childhood bedroom, I was 26 and shaking from the inside out. Everything was gone, my books, my sketches, even the old quilt Grandma May had sewn for me when I was 10. The closet hung open and empty, mocking me. The drawers had been cleared out like they'd never belonged to me. There was no letter, no note. Just silence. My mother's voice still rang in my ears from that morning. Julianne, you're old enough to stand on your own now. We've made our choice. Their choice. To give everything, my father's business, the inheritance, even my bedroom, to my younger brother, Drew. He was the golden child. Always had been. Star quarterback, charming smile, and just manipulative enough to know how to stay in everyone's good graces. And me? I was the quiet one. The artist. The one who stayed up late helping Dad with taxes and spent weekends looking after Grandma when no one else would. But none of that mattered. The betrayal wasn't just about stuff. It was about years. About the time I stayed home instead of moving to New York to care for Dad when his health declined. About the countless sacrifices I made for the sake of family unity. I used to believe loyalty would be repaid in kind. I didn't know they were keeping score with a different system, one where charm and charisma counted for everything and quiet resilience meant nothing. The night it all came crashing down, I walked in on a dinner party I hadn't been invited to. My parents, Drew, and a crowd of smiling guests raising glasses to the new CEO. My father's real estate company, what I thought he and I were building together, had been handed over to Drew behind my back. I stood there frozen, holding the bottle of wine I'd brought, like a fool. My mother barely looked at me. My father said, "You should have gone to college when we told you to." I'd gone to business school online while working 2 jobs. Apparently, that didn't count. I remember stepping outside into the cold, my breath visible under the porch light. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not in a loud, explosive way. It was quiet. Still. Final. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just drove away. But I made a vow. They had erased me from the family picture. So I would paint my own and sign it in bold ink where no one could ignore it. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew one thing for sure. They left me with nothing. So I was going to take everything. 2 weeks after I drove away from the house I no longer had a room in, I found myself sitting in a 1-bedroom rental above a hardware store in downtown Ashford. It wasn't much: peeling paint, crooked blinds, and a kitchen sink that groaned every time I turned on the tap, but it was mine. I had exactly $347 in my checking account, 2 half-filled sketchbooks, and 1 very broken heart. But I also had something my family had never truly recognized in me: vision. I pulled out my laptop, the same one I'd used for late-night budgeting sessions with Dad, and opened a blank spreadsheet. If I couldn't reclaim what they stole, I'd build something better. And I'd do it alone. I started small. Quiet. I took on freelance design work for local businesses, logos, branding packages, social media templates. A florist. A gym. A family-owned bakery. The pay was pitiful at first, but I didn't care. I needed to keep my hands busy while my soul healed. I spent nights studying real estate markets, design trends, and marketing psychology. I watched webinars and read books on entrepreneurship. Every project taught me something new. And with each invoice I sent, I got a little closer to something that looked like purpose. Still, the pain lingered like frost on glass. I'd check social media and see photos of Drew smiling beside my father, now proudly labeled CEO of Moore & Sons Realty. My mother had written a post the week after I left, so proud of our son, carrying the family name forward with strength and grace. There was no mention of me, but I didn't let it destroy me. I let it drive me. One cold Monday afternoon, I got a call from a cafe owner named Renee. She'd seen my logo work on a friend's page and wanted help rebranding her struggling coffee shop. I walked in the next morning and immediately saw the potential. Warm lighting, mismatched chairs, local art on the walls. But it had no identity, no soul. I asked her one question. What's the one feeling you want every customer to take with them when they leave here? She blinked. Hope, she said. A little bit of light. That was all I needed. I spent the next 2 weeks pouring myself into her rebrand, new signage, color palette, messaging, everything. When the relaunch happened, she had a line out the door. People cried when they saw the new mural I painted on the sidewall, a rising sun breaking through dark clouds. She paid me triple what we'd agreed. More than the money, though, it gave me something I hadn't felt in months worth. And it gave me an idea. If I could turn around one forgotten corner cafe, what else could I resurrect? What if I didn't just create brands? What if I built them? From the ground up. My family had given Drew the keys to their empire. I was going to create my own. Not for approval. Not for recognition. But because they'd pushed me out of the story, and I was ready to write my own chapter. By spring, the frost had melted from the sidewalks and from me. Something in my chest had thawed, and it wasn't just hope. It was hunger. I no longer flinched when people said, "Moore and Sons." I didn't feel the need to look away when Drew's face popped up on real estate ads across Ashford. In fact, I started collecting them. Not out of bitterness, out of strategy. Every ad told me something. Who his clients were. Where his business was growing. What markets he was ignoring. He was so busy flaunting the family legacy that he hadn't noticed where the cracks were forming. And I was quietly pouring cement into those cracks. I started working with small property owners who couldn't afford big agencies. Renovation crews who needed branding. A local contractor named Mia who built eco-friendly duplexes but had no online presence. I helped her build a brand green, elegant, modern. Her bookings doubled in 6 weeks. Word spread fast. Soon, developers were calling me, not Moore and Sons. I wasn't just designing logos anymore. I was creating full identities, businesses that breathed. Clients trusted me not just with color schemes, but with vision. And all the while, I kept building my war chest. Every dollar went back into my business. I slept on a futon, thrifted my clothes, and ate canned soup 3 nights a week. My phone was 5 years old and cracked, but it buzzed with new emails daily. People wanted what I was offering. Heart. Honesty. Design that didn't pretend. One night, I came across an old photo in my Dropbox. It was me and Drew in the front yard, barefoot and grinning, holding lemonade cups. I must have been 8, he 5. Our parents stood behind us, smiling like life was perfect. It made me sick. Not because of what came after, but because I believed in that moment. That they loved us the same. That we'd grow up as equals. Instead, I was left with empty drawers and polite silence, while Drew got champagne toasts and a gold-plated desk. But something else hit me too. They didn't just hand him the business. They handed him their trust. Which meant if I wanted to shake them, I had to build something that proved they trusted the wrong one. I registered my own LLC that same week. Juniper and Flint, strategic branding for the brave. Why that name? Juniper survives fire. Flint starts it. That summer, I signed my first 5-figure client. A women-led co-op converting an abandoned school into affordable housing. They said my pitch made them cry. They called me the architect of second chances. Funny, that's what I was giving myself. Not just a second chance. A second empire. And this one? Wouldn't carry the Moore name. It would bury it. I drove past my family's office that August. The same red brick building where I used to carry coffee for my dad, where I once refiled an entire year's worth of client folders without a thank you. It looked the same as always, familiar, polished, lifeless. The sign out front read, Moore and Sons Realty. Not and daughters. Not even Julianne. Just sons. I parked across the street and watched from my car as Drew strutted out in a navy blazer, shaking hands with 2 clients in suits. He smiled that rehearsed smile that had always fooled them all. He opened their car doors like a gentleman, like someone who had earned everything. He hadn't. He'd inherited it. I wondered, just for a moment, if he ever thought about me. If he remembered the late nights I stayed up drafting marketing plans when Dad was too tired to focus. If he knew how many deals I'd helped land without ever taking credit. Probably not. Men like Drew didn't remember who built the floor under their feet. But I hadn't come here to reminisce. I came to see how much further I had to go. Back in my tiny office, the one above the old record shop with creaky floors and mismatched chairs, I sat down with Mia, the contractor I'd helped brand months earlier. "Okay," she said, spreading out blueprints across my desk. "If we go in on this renovation project together, split branding and design, you get first dibs on office space when it's done." I blinked. "You're offering me a permanent HQ? "I'm offering you a floor," she grinned. "You've earned it." I hadn't cried in months, but my throat tightened. Not because of the offer, but because someone believed in me without asking me to prove it first. By fall, construction had begun on what would become the Juniper and Flint Creative Studio. 2 floors, exposed beams, big windows, an open gallery space. It was gritty and imperfect and completely mine. And I wasn't alone anymore. I'd built a team, 3 women from different corners of town who, like me, had been overlooked and underestimated. Anna, a fierce copywriter who once ghostwrote ad campaigns for Moore & Sons without ever getting a byline. Sasha, a quiet illustrator who'd been told she wasn't commercial enough. And Nina, a single mom who could code like nobody's business. Together, we weren't just building brands. We were rewriting the rules. Our clients weren't legacy corporations. They were fighters. Women rebuilding bakeries after divorce. Immigrants opening community spaces. Young Black-owned startups with no seed money but endless grit. And every time we launched a brand, we left a small signature on the back cover of their welcome kit. Built with a fire they said we didn't have. I didn't need to slap my name on a building to make a point. My work spoke for me. But something was shifting. Moore & Sons had started to lose steam. Their social posts were dated. Their messaging stale. The real estate market was changing, and Drew? He didn't know how to change with it. He was still playing the old game. I was building a new one. And I was just getting started. I didn't plan to compete with my brother. I just built the kind of business I wished someone had built for me. But fate, it seemed, had a sense of irony and impeccable timing. It started with a phone call. "Is this Juniper and Flint?" the voice asked. Confident. Crisp. Female. "Yes, this is Julianne. How can I help?" "I represent the Ashford Civic Redevelopment Council. We're putting out a bid for branding and community engagement on a downtown revitalization project. Your name came up. Would you be interested?" I paused, fingers frozen above my keyboard. The Ashford Revive project was a massive multi-million-dollar plan to turn 5 crumbling blocks of the city's historic district into a hub of culture, art, and housing. The kind of project Moore & Sons had been salivating over for years. "I'm interested," I said. "What's the timeline?" "Presentations are in 3 weeks. We've invited 3 finalists." I already knew who one of the others would be. Still, I smiled. "Send me the specs." That night, I gathered my team. "We're not pitching them a brochure," I told them. "We're pitching them a movement. Something alive. Something that doesn't just fill buildings, but fills them with purpose." Anna was already scribbling taglines. Sasha opened her sketchpad. Nina mapped out interactive digital plans. We worked like our bones were on fire. And when I saw the finalized bid list 2 days later, I almost laughed out loud. There it was. Moore & Sons. Bidding as a full-service legacy firm with deep local roots. They were playing their usual hand: heritage, tradition, trust. But we were about the future. On pitch day, I wore a navy blue pantsuit and no makeup. I wasn't there to dazzle. I was there to be undeniable. Drew stood 2 groups ahead of me, rehearsing his lines in the corner. He saw me. His jaw tightened. "Didn't know you were still in this game," he said smoothly. "I didn't know you could play without Dad holding your hand," I replied, walking past him. Our presentation was electric. We showed not just mock-ups, but stories, profiles of single mothers who'd benefit from co-op housing, artists who'd bring murals to life, kids who'd walk to community schools. We weren't just branding buildings. We were branding belonging. When it ended, the room was silent. And then the council chair leaned in and said, "That was different." In that moment, I didn't care if we won. Because I had already taken something from Drew no inheritance could buy. Relevance. They were still clapping when I walked out of that room. 2 weeks passed after the pitch. 2 painfully slow weeks where every time my phone buzzed, my breath caught. And still no word. I told myself not to obsess, to keep working. But some part of me couldn't let go of the possibility that we had finally done it. Not just built something better than Moore and Sons, but built something unforgettable. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, the email came. Subject line, Ashford Revive Project, decision notification. I opened it with trembling hands. Congratulations. Juniper and Flint has been selected as the official branding and community partner for the Ashford Revive Project. We were deeply moved by your vision and commitment to the people of this city. We look forward to working together. I sat back in my chair. No tears. No screams. Just a slow, stunned smile. We'd won. We'd beaten them. Not because we were louder. Not because we were flashier. But because we understood. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Blocked number. I knew who it was before I answered. Julianne, Drew said flatly. Hello, I replied, neutral. I assume you got the same email we did. Possibly, I said, enjoying the silence that followed. There was a pause on the other end. Then you blindsided us. No, I said, my voice calm. I outworked you. Another pause. I underestimated you, he admitted, the words clipped and heavy. I smiled. That's what you all do best. He hung up. That evening, I gathered my team in the new studio space. There were still wires sticking out of the walls, paint cans in the corners, and dust on every windowsill, but we toasted anyway. To the ones who were never invited to the table, I said, lifting my glass, but built one better. They cheered. And outside, the city lights flickered on soft, golden, hopeful. A new beginning. But I wasn't done yet. Because this wasn't just a win. This was a warning shot. To every person who had erased me, ignored me, or treated me like I was a backup plan. I was no longer standing outside. I was writing the guest list now. And soon, they'd realize. I wasn't just taking back what was mine. I was taking everything. Success doesn't just shift power, it exposes everything people tried to bury. After we won the Ashford Revive project, something changed in the air. People who once brushed me off began sending invitations. Developers, press, even a few city council members. They no longer saw me as Julianne, the girl who vanished from the family estate. Now I was Julianne Cross, founder of Juniper and Flint. Strategic partner to the city. Architect of something Drew could never understand. But success didn't just bring attention, it stirred up resentment. 2 weeks after the project announcement, I got a message from a number I hadn't saved. You think this changes anything? You still don't belong at that table. Mom. No greeting. No signature. Just a cold slap of words. I stared at it for a full minute, then deleted it. She was wrong. I didn't need to belong at their table. I was building my own, and mine had longer legs and stronger roots. Still, their bitterness seeped in. It came through whispers. My name mentioned in community meetings Drew used to lead. Clients of Moore and Sons quietly moving their projects to me. A real estate blog published a headline that sent shockwaves through town. The daughter they overlooked is reshaping the city. Drew must have read it 100 times. Maybe more. Because for the first time in forever, he called me to meet. I agreed. Not out of curiosity, but because I was ready. We met at that same old red brick building, Moore and Sons Realty. The lobby still smelled like lemon polish and overconfidence. His office was too clean, like it hadn't seen real work in months. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon. I didn't touch mine. You've built something impressive, he said. I waited. He leaned back in his chair. I want to propose a merger. I almost laughed. You mean, you want to put my name back on the door? I asked. No, he said quickly. Just bring your clients under our umbrella. You get access to our systems, we get your momentum. I stood. You don't have momentum. You have dust. He didn't argue. You're trying to absorb me because you can't compete, I continued. I don't need your systems. I am the system now. He stood too, the weight of it all finally showing in his eyes. You're not going to make this easy, are you? No, I said. I'm going to make it impossible. I walked out without shaking his hand. That was the moment I realized the true revenge wasn't destroying them. It was forcing them to watch me thrive without their help, their blessing, or their name. They'd passed down a legacy of exclusion and silence. I was starting a new one, of power, purpose, and voice. A few weeks after I shut down Drew's offer, an email from a journalist named Reese Collins landed in my inbox. She worked with the Civic Weekly, a national magazine that focused on female entrepreneurs reshaping industries. Her message was simple. I've followed your rise for months. I'd love to feature your journey in a full-length cover piece, especially the parts you've never shared. I think it's time the world hears your version. At first, I hesitated. Not because I wasn't ready, but because part of me still wrestled with that old instinct, to protect the people who had hurt me, to shield the family name, even when they'd erased mine from every holiday photo and every company meeting. But that Julianne was gone. I replied with one word. Yes. We met at the Second Draft Cafe, one of my branding projects that had become a community staple. Reese was sharp, warm, and respectful. She didn't prod. She asked. Gently, thoughtfully. What pushed you to build Juniper and Flint? She asked midway through the interview. I didn't flinch. They left me with nothing, I said. So I took the pieces they discarded and built something they could never touch. I stopped waiting for permission. That changed everything. Her pen paused. Who is they? My family, I answered without blinking. My parents. My brother. Moore & Sons was never meant to include me. Reese's brow lifted slightly. Will they read this? She asked. Oh, I said with a calm smile. They'll do more than read it. The article was published 2 weeks later. It didn't just go viral, it hit a nerve. The empire she was never meant to inherit, so she built her own. The story painted a picture of quiet resilience, brutal honesty, and unstoppable fire. There was no bitterness in it. No spite. Just truth. Raw. Elegant. Powerful. Julianne Cross became a trending name on LinkedIn, Instagram, even morning radio shows. Women across the country reposted quotes from the article. I wasn't written into the legacy. So I rewrote the legacy. And right there, underneath the post, Drew commented. One word, respect. I didn't reply, because this story wasn't a dialogue. It was a declaration. It arrived in a white envelope with gold lettering, my full name in cursive across the front. Julianne Cross. Inside was a formal invitation. You are cordially invited to the 50th anniversary gala of Moore & Sons Realty. A black tie event. Red carpet. Local press. The guest list included half the city's elite. I read the card twice. Then I laughed. I hadn't stepped foot in their world in almost 2 years. And now, with the spotlight shifting and the tides turned, they were extending a hand. Not as family, not as apology. As PR. I could hear Drew's voice in my head. If she comes, it'll soften the edges. Show unity. They didn't want me there as a guest. They wanted me there as a shield. Still, I RSVP'd yes. I knew exactly what I was doing. The night of the gala, I wore a midnight black gown that shimmered just enough under the chandelier lights. Simple, striking, powerful. No designer label, no flash, just elegance forged from knowing who I was. The moment I walked in, heads turned. Conversations paused. Eyes followed me across the room. My parents stood stiffly by the bar. Drew was surrounded by colleagues near the stage. He saw me and froze. He hadn't expected I'd come. I gave a polite nod and made my way toward the center of the room. A few people greeted me, small business owners, nonprofit leaders, even a councilwoman who said, "Your article changed the way I think about legacy." I smiled graciously. Then came the part one knew was coming. Drew stepped on stage to begin the evening's remarks. He spoke of history, growth, community. He thanked their loyal team, their mentors, even mom and dad for their unwavering vision. And then, just before the applause, he said, "And finally, we'd like to recognize someone who isn't on our payroll, but whose presence in this city has redefined what leadership looks like." He turned toward me. Julianne Cross, thank you for reminding us that the best success stories are the ones no one saw coming. The room clapped. It was warm, forced, political. I stood slowly, nodding once. But I didn't smile. Because this moment wasn't about reconciliation. It was about recognition. And for once, it was on my terms. After the gala, I left without saying goodbye. No hugs, no toasts, no family photos. I'd made my point. Sometimes revenge doesn't come with a door slammed or a mic drop. Sometimes it walks in quiet, stands taller than the ones who pushed you down, and leaves just as gracefully. But never unseen. It's funny how people talk about full circles, like the end always leads you back to where you started. But I didn't come full circle. I made a new one. One they were never part of. 6 months after the gala, I stood on the rooftop of the newly completed Ashford Revive project. The skyline stretched in every direction. Sunset lit the glass buildings with that warm, golden hue, the kind that makes everything look like it was always meant to be. And maybe it was. The mixed-use space below me was thriving. A co-op bookstore, a wellness studio, a coffee house that hosted open mic nights where women read poetry about resilience and rebirth. On the street corner, a bronze plaque read, "Designed and branded by Juniper and Flint, founded by Julianne Cross." I smiled, because no matter how hard they tried to erase me, the city now carried my name. That night, as I packed up my things to head home, a letter arrived at my studio. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a note from my mother. "I watched you from the back row. You didn't see me, but I saw everything. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I am sorry. You became exactly who we were too afraid to let you be." I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I didn't write back, because I didn't need her closure. I had written my own. I had learned that forgiveness isn't always something you give others. Sometimes, it's what you give yourself when you finally stop shrinking for people who never clapped for you. The story didn't end with applause or apologies. It ended with ownership. Of my voice, my work, my legacy. They handed me nothing. I built everything. And every time someone walks into a space touched by my hands, my vision, my words, I hope they feel what I once prayed for. Seen, heard, powerful. Not because they were chosen, but because they chose themselves. Just like I did.